going to briefly go over cube roots. So cube roots, we kind of piggyback on square root. So a cube root, think about a cube, something that's perfectly three-dimensional, have all the same sides. So I drew a quick little cube here. This cube is 2 by 2 by 2. So if we wanted to find the volume of this cube, we would do 2 times 2 times 2. 2 times 2 gives us 4. 4 times 2 gives us 8. So we know that 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. That's the same thing as saying the number, and I called it x, cubed equals 8. So in our case, 2 cubed would equal 8. We also could think about the cube root of 8 is x, or 2 is the cube root of 8. Notice that we have an index number of 3 out beside of our radical sign, and our number underneath, we're looking for what number multiplied by itself 3 times can equal that number. Now let's look at some different things that you'll see. So the first one that you notice, I have 27 in all of these radical signs, but there's some negatives thrown in there. So we're going to talk about those. So I'm looking for the cube root of 27. I'm looking for a number times a number times a number, and those numbers have to be exactly the same, that equal 27. So I'm not dividing by 2. I'm thinking about what can I split that into evenly 3 times. So if I think about maybe dividing it by 3, I might say, that kind of gives me a weird number. It's not dividing by 3, it's what number times itself 3 times. So I can think about my multiples. 3 times 3 gives me 9, and 9 times 3 gives me 27. So the cube root of 27 is 3. Now this one has a negative outside, so we still address it the same way. It's still a number times a number times a number, all those numbers having to be the same, and then my negatives applied. So I already know that 27, the cube root of 27 is 3. 3 times 3 times 3 got me 27. But now I have to think about applying that negative. That negative now gets applied outside of it. You can also think about this as a negative 1 times 3. That's how we get the negative outside there. So it gets us back a negative on the outside. Now, if we think about the negative inside, we've talked about if a negative is inside a radical, that it's an imaginary number. And that is true if it's a perfect square. But in a cube, remember, we can have positive or negative numbers inside of a perfect square or answer to them, because when we square them, it gets rid of that negative sign. Well, we want to keep that negative sign. So we have a number, it's got to be a negative number, times another negative number, times another negative number, and all those numbers have to be the same. We already know the square root of 27, cube root of 27 is 3. So a negative times a negative is a positive, times another negative is a negative. So that gets me back to a negative 27. So this would be a negative 3. Now the difference between these two, this needs to stay in parentheses and the negative on the outside, and this is the whole number. Because this whole thing gets put in there where only 3 is put inside and the negative is applied after. All right, let's look at 2 more examples with the negatives inside. So if I have a negative inside, I'm looking for obviously a negative number times the same number, negative again, times the same number, negative again. So negative times a negative is a positive, times another negative is a negative. So I know I'm going to get a negative answer, and I have to think what times itself 3 times is going to give me 64. Well, 4, 4, and 4. So my answer is negative 4. Put your parentheses around it. Your whole answer is negative 4. So it's negative 4 times negative 4 times negative 4 gets me back to negative 64. So our answer is a negative 4. On this one, if I think about a negative inside here, and I want to know what number times a number times a number, and they all have to be negative to get me a negative back in there, can I multiply 3 times itself to get 4? Well, there isn't one. There's nothing that I can do. A lot of times we see this and we say, oh, well, that's 2. Okay, perfect square is 2, but this is a cube root. 2, 2, and 2 is going to get us a negative 8. So this is not possible with your knowledge at this time in math.